from the ancient inherited wisdom that was given to every culture. And today I want to talk about the antidote to that. It is getting back to the ancient pattern that was given to each and every culture, and what I call the pillars of the ancient wisdom, which enable us to resist the false narratives that this devouring parasitical system has imposed. And the antidote to those false narratives is to return to the pillars of ancient wisdom, to become what I call a modern ancient man. You can find these pillars, they're the same around the world. These pillars can be grouped around these two themes of abundance and purpose. And with abundance, we're already resisting or overturning one of the big false narratives of this parasitical, devouring system, which is a narrative of scarcity. A narrative of scarcity is false. That's a false narrative. The ancient myths, as I've shown in some previous videos, and we'll talk more about it, teach abundance given by the gods. The gods have gifts for us, and they want to give us those gifts. So in the abundance foundation, the cornerstone pillar is what I call agency. It's a term, a good friend of mine gave me that term, and my definition of it is resisting the false narratives by listening to the divine voice, the voice of your higher self, your authentic self. You actually have, each one of us has, the voice of the divine. This is illustrated in the myths around the world, in the ancient wisdom. By listening to the divine voice, the divine self, the authentic self, your golden age self, that's how you resist and overcome these false narratives. And so the second pillar is divinity. We have to get in touch with the divinities that are inside of us. The ancient gods are illustrating what's going on inside of us. You can use the Greek gods and goddesses, Ares, Aphrodite, Hermes, Dionysus. You can use the Roman gods and goddesses, Mars and Venus. You can use the Norse gods and goddesses. You can use the gods and goddesses in the ancient Sanskrit texts of India. But divinity, if you don't understand that that's talking about the gods in you, you're going to have a very hard time putting into practice these ancient principles. So that's the second pillar. The third one is hospitality. So much of the Odyssey is about good guests and bad guests. Hospitality is a proper reciprocal relationship. It's very important in the Norse myths as well. Odin goes around and visits different households among the men and women of Middle Earth, Midgard, and he is looking for good hospitality, not bad hospitality. So hospitality is a reciprocal relationship. It applies to employment. It applies to just people that you meet on the street. It applies to your relationship with your partner, a reciprocal relationship of hospitality. The next one is health. The takeover of the West by parasitical Wendigo devouring spirit means that governments are now enabling parasites instead of preventing parasites, and those parasites will make money by devouring your health, by giving you bad food, by giving you bad medicine. So rejecting Wendigo parasite food and practicing good health is a pillar. Virtue. The ancient virtues are throughout the myths of the world, and they're very applicable today. This Wendigo takeover, this hijacking of the Bible says, oh, without Christianity or the Bible, there wouldn't be any virtue. You know, it's a good thing we have the Bible. No, that's absolutely false. It turns the ancient virtues on their head, actually. Getting back to nature, reconnecting with nature. Playfulness is actually an important aspect. It's an important pillar. And then imagination. We can get sucked into bad narratives, false narratives. They prey on our imagination. But imagination is a gift from the gods. It's a way to get in touch with the divine realm, is through that path. So these are all connected. So those are the principles, the pillars that are grounded in abundance, the truth of abundance, as opposed to the false narrative of scarcity. But those lead to a life of purpose. Purpose, they're connected. The pillars on the bottom and the top are connected. So our agency leads us to our calling, our life's purpose, and it may be in an employment or a business calling, but as the West has been hollowed out and deindustrialized by financial parasites, it's more and more difficult to find purposeful work or to find your calling in doing industry. We'll talk a little bit more about industry, but your calling is related to your agency, listening to your higher self as opposed to what everyone else tells you with their narratives. Oh, you need to be a doctor, or you should be this or that. Divinity, that pillar, leads to the purpose of ritual. Ritual helps give us purpose in our life and daily connection with the gods. The principle of hospitality, this reciprocal relationship, I mentioned that has to do with your partner. Finding your partner, your true partner in life, is such a huge part of life's purpose. And I'm not saying you can't have purpose without a partner. That's absolutely not true. But it is a big part of our purpose. It's a big part of what we're looking for, what we're all looking for. And so that's one of the pillars. And the ancient myths are all about that. You could see the Odyssey as being all about that pillar as well as hospitality. It's about Odysseus finding his true partner, getting back to his true partner, Penelope. And then health is related to what I call the fight or the struggle against Wendigo, against false narratives. It could be actual battle, which it was certainly in the ancient world, but it could also be metaphorical, the struggle, the fight that you have in your own life. And then connection with others. The virtues lead us to connection. The virtues are actually based on connection with other men and women, connection with nature, which we talked about, connection with the gods. These are all interconnected. Industry is actually taking the gifts of nature, the gifts of the gods, and adding the gifts that we've been given to create things, to create beautiful or useful things that help others, that create civilization. Industry is not bad. That's another false narrative that's been foisted on us. In fact, by this devouring parasites who want to get rid of industry for their own enrichment, they have spun some false narratives about, oh, industry is bad. No, the ancient myths show that industry is actually good. The Cyclops are bad. I've talked about that a little bit. Then there's expertise. It is connected to play. It's connected to industry. Expertise could be learning another language that's challenging. It could be learning to play an instrument that's challenging. It could be learning to do just about anything, martial arts, yoga, that you can really pour thousands of hours into. Having expertise at something helps us to express our purpose. And then connected to imagination is poetry. What one of my most formative professors, Colonel Terry Freeman, talked about love of language. Language, the language that we use to talk to ourselves, all the ancient myths are expressed in poetry. Poetry is actually a divine form of language, or it's a expertise form of language. It's language plus rhythm. It's language plus music. In fact, the music that we listen to is poetry, and there's bad Wendigo music that's actually been deliberately weaponized against us. If you read the works of Dave McGowan, he shows how music has actually been hijacked and used against us to promote false narratives as well. But poetry, language, music, those are all related. They're connected to imagination. These are the pillars of what I call modern ancient man, and we'll talk much more about them in the future. Thank you so much.